Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. The Gospel of Thomas. Obscure, mysterious, secret teachings. You can read them. I can read them. We can understand them. And we don't need angels to talk to us or wait for somebody to come along who has talked to angels to get the answers. There's a way to see them. And once you see it, you won't need anybody to guide you. You can guide yourself. I'm doing an introduction right now, and this seems out of place, doesn't it? I've got over 7 hours already of the Gospel of Thomas that I've attempted to decode using this process that I'm going to show you. And now with maybe one video left, I'm doing an introduction. And I apologize for that. Honestly, when I started the channel, I started telling about my life and my theories and where I went and how I got to where I am in life. And I anticipated this just being a flow that went from one place to another. And as I moved along, I started doing some side projects using my theory to decode different teachings. And I'm not very far along with that yet. It's a big job. There's a lot out there. But as I started putting down the Gospel of Thomas videos, I realized they were kind of a standalone. They should have just had their own section. I should have provided a basis for what I'm doing and how I'm decoding things so that it would be understood. I'm not a fan of the idea of magic and miracles. I don't see it. I don't see angels. I don't think they exist. I don't think that they existed 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago. I think that people understood teachings. They understood something about the way life worked. And using their best capacity, they nested that teaching in something that was applicable to their people and their time and their place and their culture, whether they were in Asia, the Near East, the Far East, wherever the case may be, and however many thousands of years apart they were, they all had the same teaching. That's the name of my channel and why it's that way, Just One Truth. If you focus learning on various spiritual or religious teachings from around the world, and you started with Vyasa and the Bhagavad Gita and Hinduism, you would find out at the core he was teaching enlightenment. If you went then to study Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, you would find out he's teaching enlightenment. If you go study the Buddha and you read the Dhammapada, you will realize that he's teaching enlightenment. If you go find teachings from Jesus, who we're covering here in the Gospel of Thomas, but in other works as well. We don't have a lot from Jesus. You can take the same thing from the Bible. You just have to take Jesus out of the Bible. Don't read the letters from Paul and think that's a part of it. It's not. Jesus didn't teach Christianity, but Jesus also taught enlightenment. They had their own verbiage. They had their own way of explaining it. And Jesus called it the kingdom of heaven within. They all taught in their own culture, their own people, their own time, and they nested this knowledge inside of something. I like to make analogies and parables myself, so I've got one here because sometimes I think illustrations, visuals can help kind of bring this home. So take a look at this right here. What do we have? Everybody recognizes this, right? We have 4 different religions, and they're all different colors. But what happens if we look inside of them? They may look different on the outside, but they all contain the same nested teaching. They come in different shells, in different packages. And in this case, the candy shell is analogous to the cryptic nature of the teaching. The cryptic nature of the teaching was there for a couple of reasons. One of them is because If you just tell people the answer and you tell them what they need to do, if they gather that, it's academic. Someone can read the Dhammapada and say, I now know what Buddhism is. They don't. They haven't figured it out. They haven't processed it. They haven't grown with it. They haven't metabolized it, so to speak, into their way of life, into their brain. They haven't wired it into their habits so that they live it. They simply know it academically, not experientially. So one reason to encode it in something that is cryptic is because the seeker is going to process that. They're going to figure it out. They're going to ponder it. They're going to spend hours trying to go, what is this crazy stuff? How does this make sense? And when they finally get it, they've applied it to their life and it means something to them. So the cryptic nature is how they taught. Another reason is because these lessons were very personal. They were very inward looking, and they involved a person changing their viewpoints, finding a way to forgive people, finding a way to resolve their hurt and pain. Look around the world. I don't think the human mind is very different today. Even though we know a lot more, people still function the same way. Pass that message around. Tell people in the world that the problems that they see are because of them. How far do you think that's going to go? You can't teach in plain language for that reason alone. If you want your message to travel around and be available for the seeker, sometimes you have to put it in a very palatable candy shell. Spiritual teachings are this way. Let's take one more picture. Take a look at this. What do we have here? This represents an example of religions that have a further outer shell. In this case, I'm going to put Christianity in this category because we're talking about Jesus. The whole worship Jesus, Son of God, life happens after you die, is this additional shell. And it actually looks like it keeps you from getting into the nested teaching. You can still unwrap it and get in there. The teaching is still in there. There's just an additional layer. And what does that layer provide? Well, there are a lot of people out there that are not going to seek. They don't want to get inside. It's not that attractive. It's very difficult. It's a personal, I got to work on myself. It isn't turn it over to Jesus. Hallelujah. My life is saved. And when I die, I will live forever. It doesn't go there. The outer shell does. And that outer shell makes it go very far and wide in the masses. And the masses aren't going to look. This story and this metaphor right here is actually analogous to something that Moses taught. Remember the story of the ark? Carried by many people, but very few get inside. Jesus used that same reference. While many are called, few are chosen. He just didn't nest that teaching inside of something that was analogous to life. I like to think that Jesus would have used peanut M&Ms if he had them available to him. Okay. The idea is that there are teachings, a personal spiritual teaching that is nested in all of these world religions, and it's the same teaching. When we go read Jesus, we're not going to find something that is some really strange, far-fetched teaching. What we're seeing is the outer shell. When we see the differences in religions and say, boy, you are wrong. Religion isn't blue, it's yellow. No, it's green. No, it's red. No, it's brown. We're fighting over the outside. Yeah, they're different on the outside. They're different shells. They're different boxes. It's the inside part we need to get to, and there's a way to do that. You know, I've looked at a lot of videos on the Gospel of Thomas and what people are saying about it, and boy, the vast majority of it just sounds like theism, the outer shell, without the God of Abraham. What is that in my analogy of the M&Ms? They've got the plastic off, but they're still holding the candy shell. They haven't gotten inside of it yet. They're still on the outside, even though they got rid of one layer. They've got another layer to go. We need to make it about us. Here's one of the very first verses in the Gospel of Thomas. This is verse number 2. It's right in the beginning. It sets things up. Jesus says, "The one who seeks should not cease seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be dismayed. And when he is dismayed, he will be astonished, and he will be king over the all." We're at the first sentence right now. We are seeking until we find. That's the level where we are in this process, in this verse. The next thing we do is become dismayed. Once you get to the inside, you find out that that candy shell isn't true. That worshiping Jesus is not going to instantly give you a ticket to heaven and you're going to live forever because you worshiped Jesus. That's going to dismay some people. If you're ready to get past that, then we can move right on to the next parts of it. And that's what I hope to do here in Decoding the Gospel of Thomas. The reason that I realized I needed to go back and do an introduction is because somebody watched a lot of my videos and we had some really good exchanges. He had some great ideas, but at some point along the path, he told me, "Boy, I'm not getting anything new out of you. You're just telling us how this changed your life, you personally, how you're able to make it fit with your experiences. I don't hear anything grand or different. What did it teach you that you didn't already know?" And I don't know what he's looking for. Enlightenment is about finding inner peace. That is what is in here. If you're looking for a promise to see your relatives that have passed on or a loved one or something, I don't see that in here. If it is, I don't see it. I'm not here to tell you what is inside of this, though. What I want to do is to show you the tools, how you look at it, how you view it, how you turn the verse inward upon yourself and have it so that it is something that creates changes in your personal life. It's about your life here and now, not a life hereafter. So yeah, there is no amount of what I cover here that entails going to the supernatural and telling people that I've got some kind of special insight or that angels talk to me or something like that. That doesn't happen. But it doesn't have to. We all have this capacity. Every master told us to. Buddha said, take everything that I've learned and take it farther. Keep going. Make it better. Jesus said we can do everything that he can do and more. These are almost plain language telling us that we're in the same category as them. They are not special in some way that we can't achieve the same thing. That we can't figure out what they figured out, that we can't know and become what they knew and became. However, if we think that they became some sort of mystical, literally walking on water, floating off into the heavens kind of a person, no, you can't follow them. But I don't believe that that actually happened. Those are metaphors for something else. This is an ascent path. This is, yeah. As we get into the teachings, we'll see that. So I wanted to address that. There isn't magic and miracles in here. This is about you. It's about me. And I put myself in the experience. As I decode these, I'm relating it to my life as much as I can. Here's what happened to me. Here is how my experience was. Here is how doing this technique or following this verse made the change in my life. That's how my intentions are to teach this. Not to tell people what to do. That doesn't work for me. To show people what I've done and let them decide whether or not it makes any sense or not. That's how I live my life, not doing what somebody says. Otherwise, I'd still be sitting in the pew praising Jesus, waiting to die so that I can live. Boy, that didn't work for me. And I suspect if you're watching this, it's not working for you either. You want answers now. I did. So I'm sorry to the guy that, wanted something that I don't find out of it. In my own life as a child, when I desperately begged for help, Jesus never helped me. And later on in life, as I continued to dig into these things and study, angels don't talk to me. I'm not that guy. To me, everything that looks supernatural is actually entirely natural, whether we understand it or not. And there are times where sensations, feelings, prayers, meditations, or when you're not even paying attention to it, things happen that you go, oh my gosh, there's something bigger than me out there. But that happens no matter what your belief is, or whether you're an atheist or somebody that's never heard the word of God or the word of Buddha or the word of Lao Tzu or anything. There is nobody being favored out there. We're all in the same boat. We're all having the same experiences, and we're looking for answers. We're looking for why that happens. I think that there are laws in this universe, and things function within those laws. To say miracles happen, you have to say that things are happening that violates the laws of nature. I'm a very science-minded kind of an individual. I would rather find grounded, down-to-earth ways. If we think the same thought sometime, and it's so obscure that we know we must have been sharing thoughts somehow, that's just a natural thing. I don't believe angels are talking to us or some magical miracle Holy Ghost thing is happening between us. Those are just natural functions that are kind of obscure. So I guess my point here is as I'm going through and doing interpretations, that's what you're going to get out of me. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see very internal functioning thought, thinking, emotion, sensing, because that is what causes us to function with our environment and to interface with other people on a spiritual level or on a cosmic level. Call it what you want. I don't know that there are spirits or not. This doesn't interfere with that. You can believe what you want. That doesn't matter. What matters is that the teaching has practices in place that, if employed, changes your life. Okay, and then something else I want to say is that I don't know that everything that is in the Gospel of Thomas is actually what was a teaching of Jesus. I don't know that Jesus existed or not. Like Lao Tzu, like the Buddha, like many teachers of the past, it's about a body of work. We're not here to worship them. We're here to follow the path that they took. They're showing us a way. That's what we're supposed to do. Jesus never said, worship me and I got your butts. He said, here, do these things. That's what we're supposed to do. Follow his path. Okay, and I would like to make another point that addresses another comment that he made to me. I am using a PDF, an online version for the series. And the reason I did that is because I thought, boy, there's going to be a lot of people out there that probably don't have the means to buy books or keep books or store books. You know, if you got a phone or pad or something that you can view this with, then you can look that up and you can follow along. He was concerned that it wasn't a translation that he thought was the best translation there. And that is all subjective. When people translate from one language to another, the words don't align. Languages are different. Processes are different. You can't just swap word for word and get the exact meaning. Translations are difficult. I have 7 different translations of the Tao Te Ching, 5 different of the Dhammapada, several Qurans. I've got multiple copies of the Nag Hammadi, plus more. These are the 2 that I recommend, actually, if you can see those. The Meyer one here. Oops, I got them backwards. The Meyer one here and the Robinson one here. They are different translations, although the the people who did the translating on any of these books, the scholars who did this, I trust did the best that they could. And when they had to figure out a way to use a word that didn't directly translate, and they didn't make a lot of editorial comments on it, they would choose different words because they have different ways of thinking, different belief systems. There's a little bit of fudging in these translations. What I would recommend, if you have the means to do it, is to grab multiple translations, different ones from different sources, and make comparisons if you're doing this study on your own and you really want to know what's going on and you really want to dig into it. If you're interested in doing that, use that technique, because it kind of averages out the idea. You get a better idea by hearing it from a couple of different sources. Instead of one word, you get 6 different words, and you can kind of, like I said, average that out into a thought. That having been said, I find that using the technique that I'm going to be employing here, that they all contain the message. It just depends on how your mind works too. So it's subjective. You can't just say there's one copy that is the right copy to use and forget the others. That's not really the case. There's only one time I find that to be problematic, and that is with the King James Bible. Later versions of that is biblical scholars. They were not academic scholars. They were people who believed in God. When they made translations or they further tried to explain things, I know that they would have erred as they were choosing words on the side of their Christian beliefs. And I don't want that. The farther you get from the source of origin, the worse it becomes. It's better to stay as close as you can. And I only speak English. A little bit of German, a little bit of Spanish, but not enough to be fluent in it. So I rely on translations, and that's what I would recommend. And for him, yeah, that's the reason. The one that I'm using is one that is free and available to you. You're riding the bus and you want to study it, you can pull it up on your phone and read it. You don't have to have a book with you or something like that. So it was just a personal choice that I thought would be more helpful to the viewer. Now, this is very important. How I read these and decode these are based on the subconscious mind. And let me tell you why that is. Imagine it's 2,000 years ago. That's Jesus. That's recent. Or 2,500. Buddha, Lao Tzu, or 4,000. You get into Moses and Hinduism, the earliest stuff. What did they know? How did they live? We have a difficult time today reading their stuff, which sounds like this magical, mystical sort of stuff. That's what they thought it was. They wrote it that way. And they encoded it that way, and they nested it that way. In their times, very few people could read or write. You and I would not have been able to read or write. We wouldn't have been able to go to school. We would have just been working and trying to survive, becoming, a farmer or a rancher or whatever job it was, a fisherman, somebody that made textiles. And we would have done that as soon as we were old enough to start working and do it, because we needed to help the community. There was no media. There was no electricity. None of the resources that we have were available then. Their life would have been very primitive by our standards. A lot of people today would not be okay with living back then. They had no choice. That's all they knew. That's what their life was like. And their stories and their belief surrounded that kind of a lifestyle. They didn't know what a brain was. When they were telling people that you need to heal your soul, what is that? How do you heal a soul? What is a soul? What I believe, using imagination, and I encourage you to get inside your head and just let it go, let it fly, let it let it wander. I think when we get ideas from out of nowhere, that's what people think are angels or Akashic records or something like that. We all have that capacity. That's not reserved for special certain people. That's a human quality. Imagine back then that you're functioning, not knowing what a brain was, not knowing what a subconscious mind was, going about your activities, walking down the road, talking to your buddies, taking care of your business while you're mentally focused somewhere else. They would have thought, what is making that work? How are you functioning? You're out there fishing, catching your fish, but you're not thinking about that. You caught your fish while you were thinking about something different. That must have been your soul. That's my contention. That would have made sense. They didn't have a name for it. They didn't understand how it worked, but they obviously would have observed it. They were smart people. They were as intelligent as we are. They just didn't know what we know. We've learned a lot since then. We know our brain and our nervous system are really the component parts for our emotions, our feelings, and our glands, our endocrine system. The human is a complex thing, and they just thought it was a body with a spirit inside of it. So when you're talking about healing the soul, what you're really talking about is healing your mind. As you read through and it talks about becoming the epitome of love, forgiving your enemies, doing all of those things like that, we know that those are all qualities that emerge from and reside in our thought process, in our brain, in the gray matter. So as I do the decoding, that's what I look at. I make it about me, but I make it about my thoughts and my brain, because then, I can do something. And if I forgive in a way that I'm told to, if I bring something out of me that I want hidden, the metaphoric pulling the weeds in the garden, making friends with the skeletons in your closet, getting rid of your demons, all of those metaphoric things made sense to them. Imagine today screaming and yelling, losing it over something. You got a problem with something. I've had this happen to me in my life. And when it's done, you feel horrible. It's like, oh my God, I did that. I'm sorry. You make amends. It happens again. You make amends. It happens again. You make amends. You are consciously saying, I don't want to do that. But something inside of you, when it gets triggered, acts out. That's a demon. And they would have looked at that, I'm certain, and said, yeah, that person is possessed. They've got a demon in there. We know that our demons are the things that we have hidden away, tucked away, our fears, our pain. So I look at it that way because it makes sense to me. And if I was living back then and somebody said, that's your soul, I would have said, yep, I believe you. I can see that. I'm a smart person. I see exactly what you're talking about. I see what my soul is doing. And I see I have to heal my soul by loving and by forgiving. And whether you're looking outward and attributing that success to external beings or forces, it's going through your brain. The healing is all happening up here, which then changes the way you experience life, which changes the way you engage with life, which changes your life. Yeah, we're all our own creators. We are. We create in that way. We don't create worlds. We create our own world. And I want to say right up front, that is how I approach this. I do. It's a very personal, it's very methodical, and it's within those constraints. It does not bring about any dependence on the supernatural or capricious functioning deities out there that may or may not function on your behalf, or your capacity to clear your chakras or anything like that. It's all right here. Okay, and then very quickly, I want to give an example of the layering of the verses. I'm going to make up a verse here real quick, show you how this works, and tell you this is how I approach decoding the teachings, regardless of whether they come from Lao Tzu, Buddha, Jesus, you name it, all of them. Myths, heroes' journeys, all of them. They work the same way. They nest the same things. Some are religious and spiritual, and some are fantastical stories. But they're all designed to tell us that whatever we're carrying inside is what we have to repair. That all of our monsters, our demons, our angels, everything is inside of us. Okay, and if you've watched my previous videos, you've already seen this example, but I'm just going to put it out here again because it's an easy one to cover. This one is an anchored ship cannot sail. I made that one up so nobody can argue with the meaning of it. Layer 1, the outermost layer. A ship in the water, anchors out, it's not going anyplace. It's done. It's not interpreting. It's just face value. Second layer is interpretation. Somebody looks at it as a metaphor, but makes it about their physical life. And they will say perhaps something like, oh, that means as long as I'm not furthering my education, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm stuck here at this dead-end job. I'm not going to improve my life. I'm holding on to a relationship that is constantly hurtful because I'm afraid of not being in a relationship. So I'm settling and I'm not going to move on in life. All of those interpretations would make sense. That's where Christianity develops thousands of different denominations. The last layer is where you take the verse and you turn it in on itself and you use it on yourself. You are the ship, metaphorically. Life is the ocean. But what you're anchored onto are things that are up here that you hide, that you don't want anybody to know. Or perhaps they are thoughts that you share with other people, thoughts of prejudiced beliefs towards other people, things that are not thoughts that coincide with getting to nirvana or the kingdom of heaven within, the Holy Land, any metaphoric term you can think of where we're looking to get, where it's a loving, peaceful place. You're holding on to something that you need to let go of. Anger, shame, hatred. Somebody did something to you, and I'm not going to forgive them. It's not about them. It's about you. That's how I treat all of the verses. They don't all turn inward. A verse like, I like milkshakes, doesn't have an inner meaning. Okay, that's strictly a physical meaning. So you have to look at the verse and apply the technique. See if it works and see if it somehow manages a change in your mind. You cannot change the world and what's happening out there. Ultimately, the goal for peace and inner peace, the nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within, again, it's a personal process. You don't make your world that way. You make yourself that way. And that's how I approach this teaching. It's that good, and that's what it is. And when we realize that, we'll be astounded. And then we will be king over all. We will rule. But what is it we rule? We rule ourselves. We rule our own life. This is one of the verses that we decode. Anyway, okay, this is the introduction. That's what I wanted to say. And it was based on someone communicating with me, and I realized, boy, this thing is not standing alone on its own. People aren't going back to the earliest videos that I made and coming through the process with me. And that's okay. I don't expect anybody to. I should have anticipated this. And if I had it to do over again, I would be like, oh my gosh, I should have made this whole series a standalone on the Gospel of Thomas. I'm learning. I'm new at it. Anyway, please be patient. Okay, hope this helps. Get into it. And by all means, feel free to leave comments. I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. Anybody that says they do is done looking. They probably have the least answers. When somebody knows the one right way, get away. All right. See you in the next video.